that's right. I mean, it's ancestor magic is what, so in physics, what, so I was brought up in the tradition of physics, which is absolutely an esoteric tradition of a certain kind, and also a religious tradition that clearly comes from the Catholic Church, than the Protestants, but like it has that origin. And part of what you are brought up with in physics is this ancestor worship, where everything you learn is named after these people, these men, these men of empire, going all the way back, and they're always like all of the things that you learn are the name of somebody who is close to the power of an empire, and not just one empire. I mean, even algebra and algorithm are named after a guy who was in Baghdad, who worked for the caliph. When they had the caliphate in Baghdad, and they had the House of Wisdom, and they got all the math nerds to get in orbit of the most powerful guy around, just like now. And still, algebra and Isaac Newton and Leibniz and Poisson and Lagrange and Laplace and Legendre and all these names that we grow up in math and physics being steeped in this. And it is a kind of ancestor worship. And then because they treat it that way, they treat it as a family tree. Like, I've been in physics departments where they have a giant framed image on the wall with a family tree showing the PhD advisors going back to show the ancestry, that like this atomic physicist trained under this atomic physicist, and these people are two atomic physicists removed from this great lordly atomic physicist of the early 20th century. And so it's very much, it is a kind of ancestor worship, where everything you do is invoking these people's names. You invoke the name of these great men, and then and then they invoke them, and then they try to replicate them over and over and over again. And I think this is part of when physicists end up doing things that don't really go anywhere. A lot of what happens is that people are sort of cosplaying these ancestors, trying to people will gather in Europe and take these photographs that look like the photographs that they took in the 1920s of all the famous the fathers of quantum mechanics and so on. So it's a very patriarchal and very, it's really creepy. Like when you get into it and you see, and then they made that Oppenheimer movie that they sold the same myth to the general public of the great legendary Oppenheimer. And that's a myth that I grew up with in physics, where they're constantly telling you about the great Oppenheimer and Lawrence and all these stories that you're supposed to get excited about. And I grew up
that
with
is such a beautiful framing. And I think I'm gonna have to start using that. Like, ancestor worship is definitely the main magic of patriarchy. And it's like all the ancestors that get to be venerated or reviled are the heroes or the villains. Like, for example, like someone like a John Brown is remembered by the overculture as having been, some lunatic, some weirdo, when in fact it was just that this is a person who had eschewed the position they could have had amongst the like regular, like white ancestors, and was like, do y'all see what you're doing? And tried to use his magic essentially for the people. Yes. And for that, he got to be remembered essentially as remembered negatively as an ancestor. Right. You know what I mean? It's so interesting. And I think that's a framing that I think, breaking down the patriarchy itself, like, and I always say, if you think that the patriarchy doesn't exist, whose last name do you have? Everything is everyone, no matter what color you are, no matter where, it's all some dude's last name. And that's the way that all lineage is tracked, and all the names are tracked, and everything. And it really is. Wow. That is like, this is why we come to see the wizard.